Not within the authority of your department to grant these waivers?
We look at them case by case.
Yes or no? Do you have the authority to grant the waivers?
In some cases, yes.
Yes, you do. Thank you.
Senator Booker, before you talk, we've got, I said I had to quit around 2, maybe it's more like 2:10, so I've got you and Harris. Senator Coons, do you want 5 minutes? That's 15, so I hope that we can, that nobody else comes in here because I'd like to get my questions asked. Go ahead, Senator Booker.
After I speak, I can Katie bar the door if you'd like me to, sir.
Go ahead.
All right.
Thank you. I'll trust you.
Thank you, sir. Just real quick, I, like you, agree that dangerous criminals, we should get them out of our country. But when you say that bucket of criminals, you're talking about people that could be low-level crimes from a decade ago. That still counts as a criminal, correct?
The ones that we target are criminal offenses. In other words, there are some civil offenses that would not fall within our top-tier prioritization.
But it's a felony for marijuana possession, say, that somebody might have done 10, 15 years ago. That's a criminal in your
yes,
definition.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And that person would be prioritized for deportation.
One of however many we agree on are here illegally, 11 million, yes.
Okay, you said earlier, and this might be a question for the record because I know you weren't in your position at this time, but you said earlier that the Customs Border Patrol follows court orders, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so I had a personal experience with this last year when I went to Dulles Airport during the first iteration of the Muslim ban. There was a temporary injunction from a federal judge requiring the Customs and Border Patrol to provide individuals affected by the executive order access to counsel. I was called to go up there because they were refusing to abide by that and provide counsel for those individuals. So as a question for the record, would you please explain to me, I was there myself, they refused to even talk to me or discuss it as I was holding the court order to let the people being detained. Could you please, for the record, I have yet to get an understanding of why Customs and Border Patrol was refusing to abide by a court order.
I'd be happy to look into that.
Thank you very much. On December 1st, 2017, Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General released a detailed report detailing the results of unannounced spot inspections of 6 ICE detention facilities. I'm sure this is a yes question, but you believe in the dignity of all human beings, correct?
Absolutely.
And that they should be treated with a certain level that respects that dignity and affirms their humanity. Well, the Inspector General's report raised serious questions regarding the treatment and the care of ICE detainees. The report stated, and I quote, "We identified problems that undermine the protection of detainees' rights, their humane treatment, and the provision of a safe and healthy environment. In light of this administration's highly aggressive posture towards the immigrant community and putting people into these facilities, it's very troubling to me that your own Inspector General would have a report detailing the United States of America treating others in an inhumane manner that's an assault to their dignity." And so can you affirm to me that you're aware of this report?
I am aware of this report, yes, sir.
And then what actions are you taking right now to address the concerns?
First of all, looking into both the recommendations and the facts provided. As you might know, the Homeland Security Advisory Council did its own review independently for the department just over a year ago, I guess at this point, on detention centers. I'd like to look at the recommendations from both to address any issues that remain and certainly any concerns of inhumane treatment.
Okay, and so you're saying that you're going to try to implement the recommendations of the report. Can you give me some kind of timeline or assurance? And
I'm happy to come and brief you myself, sir. I have not had an opportunity to understand the depth of any changes that might be necessary or whether the facts, I just need more information. As you said, it just came out in December. So I'd be happy to do that.
I'm really grateful, and I will take you up on that offer. On September 11th, right after the attacks, the federal government created the NSEER system, the National Security Entry and Exit Registration System. The program requires non-citizen visa holders from certain countries to register with the federal government. The registration process included fingerprinting, photo taking, interrogations. Once an individual was registered, NSEERS required the person to regularly check in with immigration officials. And finally, NSEERS monitors people who registered with the program to ensure that no one remained in the country longer than the law permitted them. Notably, the only people who had to register for the list were from Muslim countries, with the exception of North Korea. And so I'm wondering, do you believe that it is legal and in keeping with the values of our country enshrined in our Constitution to force people from Muslim nations to register their presence in the United States?
Based on the fact that they're Muslim, absolutely not.
I've introduced legislation trying to prevent that kind of registry from being created through NSEERS. Is that something that you'd be willing to commit to making sure that does not happen in terms of creating something akin to a Muslim registry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for a chance to continue questioning you on some of the issues I'd raised previously and a few additional. First, about conditions of detention. On September 26th last year, the ACLU filed a complaint asking DHS to investigate 10 cases of pregnant women who were held for weeks at detention facilities in California and Texas, despite a memo signed by Acting Director Homan last year barring the practice, quote, absent extraordinary circumstances or the requirement of mandatory detention. I also raised this in person with then Acting Director Homan. The complaint by ACLU alleges at least 2 of these women miscarried while in ICE detention centers because of insufficient health care support during detention. How many pregnant women are currently in ICE detention centers? And what has DHS done to ensure they get the health care they need?
Sir, I can't give you the number, but the guidance that you referenced by Acting Director Homan goes into quite some detail about the provisions and support that ICE detention centers would provide. Many of the instances, I believe, that have been in the press are actually in our sister agency related to HHS, so we're working with HHS as well to ensure that the policies are aligned.
Thank you. The administration sought in this year's budget proposal, FY18, that we're now well into, to cut funding for the Port Security Grant Program by half, from $100 million to $50 million. And I understand there's a proposal being discussed to cut it even further to $36 million. Needless to say, this program is important to a number of ports on the Delaware River. My home state is Delaware. Why do you think it's prudent to significantly reduce investments in port security?
What I believe, sir, is that what the administration did was look at all of the grant programs across the board from a risk basis. There are other risks that we need to address, so it's more of an allocation issue. It's not to say there isn't a risk at the ports. As you know, the Coast Guard continues to be very involved, as do other parts of DHS and the government that help with the security of the ports.
In April, Senator Rubio and I introduced the Counterterrorism and Screening Assistance Act, and there is a companion in the House. It would strengthen the ability of our allies and partners around the world to track terrorist and foreign fighter travel in particular. Directs DHS to provide appropriate versions of Custom and Border Protection's global travel targeting and analysis systems, software, and other systems to foreign partner governments. And it also authorizes DHS to provide excess non-lethal equipment, supplies, training to foreign governments to further U.S. Homeland Security interests. Does DHS support these goals, and in your understanding, would it support the passage of this bill?
To prevent foreign fighters from coming to the United States? Absolutely. Yes, sir. We'd look forward to working with you on it.
We'd appreciate your engagement on that. About 4 months ago, Hurricane Maria slammed into the island of Puerto Rico, and both the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico particularly, and to some extent Florida, suffered significant damage, but it was catastrophic for Puerto Rico. What's your sense today, 4 months later, of roughly what percentage of the island has power and water?
Well, the power, as you know, goes up and down. We're around 60 to 70% water. The story with water is a little better, but there's a lot more that we need to do, sir. It's going to be a road of recovery. We need to continue to work with them.
And what's your sense of the official death toll in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane Maria?
So I know they're looking at that. As you know, it's a state and local determination to determine causation. We've been in close contact with the governor as he does his review and assessment. It's an important figure for us all to understand.
Do you believe your department's response to Hurricane Maria could have been better?
I believe that we learn lessons as we go. It was an unprecedented response, is what I can tell you, both from a pre-positioning to an immediate response to the men and women who are there on the ground now. We had one of the largest surge forces that we've ever had, meaning we had people coming from all parts of government to join with FEMA. But I'm very anxious to learn the lessons learned and to see how we can do better in the future.
I'll say, while I'm grateful for the service of those, the United States military and FEMA who responded, I think it could have been and still needs to be better than it has been. I hear regularly from the Puerto Rican community in Delaware about family members who are still stranded and about failures to respond in a way that I would expect Delaware would have received or other states on the mainland would have received. And I am gravely disappointed in the response to date and would love to work with you to try and, as you put it, learn those lessons, but also to strengthen the response. My last question. Since November, the Department has terminated TPS designations, temporary protected status designations, for quite a few countries. If I'm not mistaken, Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere that suffered a devastating earthquake, El Salvador, a country with very high homicide levels, as well as Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, which suffered near catastrophic civil wars. Our country has long welcomed those seeking refuge from natural disasters and from civil strife. There was, as has been discussed at great length, an unfortunate meeting last week where the President was reported to have suggested that we don't welcome people from certain countries, and in particular countries under difficult circumstances. In my experience, some of the greatest Americans have come from countries suffering through difficulties. Alexander Hamilton immigrated here from Nevis. I have been to Haiti. I've been to Liberia. And there are Liberian Americans and Haitian Americans in my home state who make great contributions to our state and our economy and our culture every day. Will you produce the analysis and the input that DHS received from other agencies that justify these terminations in TPS status?
I'm happy to work with your staff. To the extent that some of the information doesn't belong to me, if you will, I'd have to work with my colleagues to be able to give you an affirmative. But yes, I'm happy to walk you through the full analysis.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for your answers. And in my view, it's important that we find a way working together to both protect our homeland from those threats we both see clearly, yet to do so in a way that reflects and respects the values that have made this a country that has long been a beacon for human rights and a place that has welcomed refugees and that has been strengthened by the contributions of immigrants from all over the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.